Need for Speed has been going on for a very long time. It's actually older than me, which is very weird to think. And since, Need for Speed's inception, they have tried a lot of different things, whether it's track racing, underground illegal street racing, cops and robbers. With the series that has released so many games, it comes to no surprise to anyone that it has tried a lot of things. Bruh. I can almost guarantee if I showed you 3 different Need for Speed games and you had never seen Need for Speed in your life and you weren't aware with what Need for Speed was, you would probably think they were all from different franchises. So it comes to no surprise to anyone that Need for Speed has been undergoing an identity crisis for a while. Although in recent years, it is getting better. I do feel like there's some clashing in ideas and some things that just aren't getting through properly, which makes Criterion's job all the more harder with Need for Speed 2021. But to kind of cover this subject properly, we need to go right back to the start with the original Need for Speed.
Well, I do believe I got me my first UFO capture. You better start turning green real fast, Gizmo, or the National Enquirer ain't gonna buy my story.
So in 1994, Need for Speed just consisted of supercars, police, and exotic locations. And if you don't count Porsche Unleashed, Motor City Online, and V-Rally, oh, and Need for Speed 2, because Need for Speed 2 didn't have police, this basically continued until... Up until this point, Need for Speed was purely supercars in exotic locations. Black Box completely flipped the script with Underground. It was nothing that we'd seen before, and still to this day, it divides the community to a certain regard. Now, although the earlier Need for Speeds were about exotics, etc., Need for Speed Underground, whether you like it or not, is what transformed Need for Speed from a pretty successful gaming franchise to a global name. When you have Underground 1 and Underground 2, highly successful games that sell so much, the meaning of Need for Speed kind of changes. Then fast forward to Most Wanted with the reintroduction of police. The template for any modern Need for Speed is literally right there, even 15 years on in the year of the gamer. Police, customization, open world, illegal street racing. Although I do think at some point from 2005 to like 2011, people were asking for different things. I think now in 2020, that is the basic template for any Need for Speed game. In 2007, we then got Need for Speed Pro Street. Definitely a cult classic. I'm not arguing with that, but it was a track racer. So obviously that was a bit jarring. The fan base was very much accustomed to the illegal street racing that we'd seen in previous games. So to go to Pro Street, especially in 2007, very jarring difference. And clearly Black Box knew as well, otherwise, we probably would have got a Pro Street 2 instead of an Undercover. Up until this point, it's been pretty consistent, cops, cars, racing on illegal roads, there's a general consensus to what Need for Speed is. Then EA wanted a Gran Turismo rival, and this is where Need for Speed Shift comes in. If you put Need for Speed Shift alongside these Need for Speed games, got rid of Need for Speed, so it's just called Shift, you would not think this is a Need for Speed game. You think it would probably be like a TOCA game, or like a grid style game. You wouldn't guess Need for Speed. And I want to go on the record as saying I actually really enjoyed Shift. Whether it's a Need for Speed game is not really a conversation I'm going to be having in today's video, but the game was definitely solid when I played it, a few years after release. Things then got even more muddled over the course of the next few years as we went from Hot Pursuit reboot to The Run, which was something we'd never seen before, back to Shift 2, which was more of a simulator than the original Shift was, to a Most Wanted reboot that had nothing in common with the original Most Wanted.
Wow. That's awesome.
In my opinion, this was Need for Speed's most confused time. If you put all of these titles back to back to back and you just look at it and get rid of Need for Speed like I did earlier, they don't have any consistent themes really, especially if you look at Shift. I guess The Run does a little bit, but themes are very muddled. There's no brand consistency is what I'm saying. Then Ghost Games take over and it definitely got worse before it got better.
An officer from the FBI's vehicle response team remains in critical condition after a collision with the outlaw racer, Zephyr. While authorities will not release the name of the injured officer, our sources tell us the officer has already been terminated from the force for his reckless actions.
Rivals was trying to be Hot Pursuit 2 2.2. It was a weird one. Like, I think at this time, fans were just screaming for an Underground style game. But they were insistent on giving us another Hot Pursuit style experience. And then the reboot happened, and a large portion of this video is going to be based around the Need for Speed reboot. For me, it signifies a big thing because this is when Need for Speed was going to turn the table and for the first time in over 10 years say this is what we are. Illegal street racing, customization, cops, a story, a gritty urban atmosphere. This is what Need for Speed was going forward.
That is the new Need for Speed, inspired by some of the most beloved games in the series, from the customization of Underground to the world of Carbon. From the narrative style of Most Wanted to the innovation and visuals of Rivals.
I still look back at 2015 now because I still feel like the tone that was set with that game is different even with some of the more current games that have released since then, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Going forward, I want Criterion personally to take from Need for Speed 2015's atmosphere and its vibe and its tone and its theme and its identity, because to me in the modern landscape that is what Need for Speed should be. And I think one of the more important things I should say here is it should feel underground. This is where we talk about the current games being Payback and Heat. I feel like the essence of what Need for Speed 2015 was very much lost going from Payback and even Heat. And we're going to talk about both individually. Since we've been going in chronological order for the whole video, let's start off with Payback. There was a serious switch in tone for the whole game. Customization of the cars takes a backseat to the characters as the game goes full-on solo single player. There is a multiplayer focus, but by the fact that online free roam wasn't there on launch and you still get D-ranked when you win races in the ranked PvP, you can clearly tell they spent more time with the single player. The game is less stylized, seems a lot more generic, and some of the customization goes borderline sci-fi. The grounded real-life customization of Need for Speed 2015 with the real-life Rocket Bunny kits and Jun kits and the Varys kits goes away for this. The reintroduction of hypercars comes along. I don't really mind the introduction of hypercars, it's how they're used and the quantity of them though. In Need for Speed 2015, the F40 felt like a grand car. It was one of the very few supercars that was in the game, but it felt special. In Payback, I didn't feel that way with cars like the 918, the P1, etc. And finally, and this is kind of the big one, which definitely carries over to Heat, the game feels closer to a modern Fast and Furious superhero film and less grounded in reality than Need for Speed 2015 was. A perfect example of what I'm talking about is I could make the analogy that Need for Speed 2015 is Fast and Furious 1, and Payback is Fast and Furious 7. And that's where we come to Heat. And Heat's a weird one because it's a weird mix of both. Now, before we talk about Heat, I should say that when we're talking about the new games, it's not all bad. We're not going through that same period that we went through in 2012. That's the reason why I mentioned it. There's much more consistency that we have now. Like, Need for Speed isn't just going to go onto a track next year. We know that. But it's about dialing all of that in for the Need for Speed brand to just be consistent. Although we know we're going to get a customization-based racing game, Fast and Furious 1 and Fast and Furious 7 are two completely different experiences, even though they're both movies that, you know, include customized cars. And that's where I feel Need for Speed is right now. So is Need for Speed Heat a continuation of the reboot or a return to Payback? Like I said a minute ago, it's a weird mix of both. It keeps the Fast and Furious superhero feeling of Payback, but then I think it tries a bit too hard to be hip, cool and trendy like 2015 was. I feel like there's conflicting ideas. It's kind of trying to fight with both. It's not sure whether it wants to be an illegal street racing game grounded in urban car culture or this Fast and Furious over-the-top action film. An example of this is easily shown in the customization. This is not grounded in reality in any way, shape or form. Instead, it's closer to the kind of sci-fi customization that we saw in Payback. However, if you look at some of the cars, the AI cars, I get more of a 2015 vibe from the way that this R34 looks than anything that I saw in Payback. That looks grounded in reality and that looks like a car I would see at a car meet. Then likewise, you look at the car list and you know, a P1 GTR is there. Could you imagine a P1 GTR in Need for Speed 2015? I don't personally think so. Again, I just don't think it matches the vibe the game was going for. Which leads us to where we are now in the present day. Everyone's going to have their own opinions on whether they'd like Need for Speed to carry on going in the kind of sci-fi, Fast and Furious, over-the-top direction, or something a bit more homegrown. For me, I would personally like them to go back to what 2015 was. Grounded customization that is influenced by real-life car culture and the urban scene in general. That means the music, that means the clothing. They're already kind of doing that at the moment, but even in Heat, it just feels so disconnected from reality. Like, even the poses people make outside the cars, and it's like, oh, hashtag selfie, take a selfie with me. No one does that, bro. I don't think it would be hard for them to ask people, you know, in that industry or in that field and really get a feeling of what that culture is like. But with Criterion now taking over, I'm hoping they see sense and they can see what I'm seeing and what I've tried to show you in this video, because this and this, they're just not the same. And if we can get a focus on current car culture in what will eventually be 2021, and if they can ask speed hunters to predict, you know, certain customization trends they think they can see going into next year, that is gonna be huge. Keep in mind that Speed Hunters is actually owned by EA, and that's my hope going forward. That is what I am hoping for. But let me know what you think. This week I'm going to be uploading bi-daily instead of daily, spending a little bit more time on these. So if you did enjoy, hit the like. I will see you guys in the next one. You guys have been awesome. Stay safe and peace.